So that's the wonderful thing, and again, for our new people here today, it's the wonderful thing about the Unitarian Universalist Church. We have a varied view of both life and death. And that's part of who we are as a non-creedal faith. We want everybody to develop their own spirituality. Now, in this sermon, I want to just recognize the following references that I used. A History of Death, Unitarian Universalist Style, which was from the Harvard Square Library, the National Library of Medicine, because I thought we should get some science in this, on Reflections on Death in Philosophical and Existential Context, Death in the Afterlife by Clifford Pickover, Plots in Time, an Inquiry into History, Myth, and Meaning by our own member, Professor Alan Tilley, the Unitarian Universalist Church in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and the Unitarian Universalist Association. Before I start my sermon, I was asked to do this sermon by Carol Hawkins, whose husband Brian Simpson died, and I'm going to have Carol say a few words to us.
So I want to thank Peter and the worship team and the church, whole church, really, for the service today. I really appreciate you doing this. And it was Brian's birthday on Tuesday, so he would have loved this. This is perfect. So my boyfriend and partner, Brian Simpson, died a year ago on June 17th. Before I knew Brian, I had felt lonely all of my life for many different reasons. And after meeting Brian, what I knew hands down was that I was loved. He left, no doubt. And then he died. And I wondered, how could I lose something this important? How could he just disappear? If we all just end, along with everything we've ever loved or accomplished, then what is the point of even living in the first place? There's a movie that I watched. It's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. It's a sci-fi flick where a teenage girl creates a time loop on the last day of her mother's life in order to avoid having to say goodbye. Finally, at the end, her mother says this to her. She says, "Listen to me. It's true that we're losing time every day, all the time, until one day it's all gone. But you're gaining it too. Every second, perfect moments, one after the other, until at the end, you have your whole life. You have everything. And it costs you everything. But it's worth it. I promise, it's worth it." So, to me, her words were about accepting impermanence. We simply live in a three-dimensional world that is moving forward through time. It's a series of experiences that we gain and then lose in nearly the same moment. I had Brian for 6 years, and then I lost him. But I've also gained him. And that is good.
Thank you, Carol. And I think just so we know today that death has been a big topic around for a long time. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, about every famous philosopher and theologian has expounded on it. So I thought it was proper that your humble minister join this illustrious group. Just kidding. But let's face it, we could go on for a year course about this. But I'm not doing a comparison of different religions or philosophies because we can do that. I want us to reflect on what's unique or at least distinct about our Unitarian Universalist perspective on death. So I'll start with a story. Almost exactly 12 years ago in October, I was very busy in the world around me. working with my team at the Jaguars, getting ready for the next game and some upcoming community events, thinking about dinner, what we were going to eat at home, and I got food poisoning at lunch from a food truck. I got so sick that put a cramp in my schedule and got dehydrated, and the next day had a splitting headache and went into the emergency room. And those of you who know the drugs, they did a series of drugs on me, and none of them took away the pain. And it didn't make a dent in the excruciating pain. And then I died. Well, obviously, I didn't really die. I was not in that side of the room. I'm still here. But with the extreme pain, they gave me medicine that made me unconscious for 12 hours. And so the medical team was trying to figure out what to do because I ended up having some blood clots leaving my brain. Fortunately, they weren't going to my brain, otherwise I would have been dead. But it was very similar to death for me, the experience, because as I went unconscious, I think to use the word Sharon Schultz said, relief, I felt complete peace. The pain went away into nothingness. And when I woke up the next day, I thought about the phrase eternal peace that some use to describe death, and it fit my experience. No worries about tomorrow, no bills, no family matters, nothing. I was completely gone. Now, I would want to say that there was also no light at the end of the tunnel. Now, Jesus was not waving to me, so I'm not sure what that meant. Either it was not my time, or maybe it's a precursor of where I was going to end up when I really die. So either way, when I came back to consciousness, back to the world of living, all of those things came back. The worries of the day, the anxiety. And so, the fact of the matter is we all face death every day. Death of friendships, relationships, our abilities, aging, hobbies, jobs. We also face a final physical death. As Carol expressed, why death? After 6 years at finding someone that became a person so critically important in her life. So why does a person have to die? And how does it make sense? We understand the life cycle rationally, but we can, as importantly, say, as she did, I miss him. So I think that for us, this unique aspect of our trend, which tends to be a little heretical against the main line of beliefs, goes back before Unitarian Universalism was a religion or faith by name. Our own Dr. Tilley said in his book, Plots of Time, that the oldest datable story that he had about death was the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, now about 4,000 years old. And after his friends dies, he questions, why death? And he's told, if he does not sleep, he won't die. Which, of course, he cannot do. And so to add insult to injury, while he was asleep, the plant of renewed life that he had was stolen from him. Dr. Tilley reminds us that we cannot choose not to die. Even if we are semi-divine heroes, all humans will die. Gilgamesh returns to his city aware that whatever he can accomplish must be accomplished in the context of mortality. And I think that's what Unitarian Universalists do. We understand our mortality. Now, our immediate predecessors, the Puritans, had quite a scary concept of death. When you take a look at the earliest burial grounds in Puritan graveyards, the grave markers often included a motif of a skull, a death head, sometimes with or without wings. The family member would decide which way the person was going. These markers, as well as the burial grounds themselves, were intended to make people fearful. They were reminders not only that death is always rushing toward us, which I think people know, but that it's likely accompanied by damnation. Now, of the course of years after that, the images on grave markers changed. The skull begins to morph into a face the teeth lose their points and flowers spring up before where they were crossed bones. Now, liberal religion both caused and was caused by the transformations that made such a progression from fear to hope possible. This change is most striking if you go to the Mount Auburn Cemetery, established by prominent Unitarians in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1831. It was the origin of rural cemetery movements in the United States. In these new places of repose, they were complete contrast from the Puritan burial grounds. The grave markers were artistic, classical monuments, presented in the context of a beautiful, cultivated landscape. Encouraged to enjoy the beauty of the landscaping, the public learned to contemplate death in the peaceful context of nature and beauty. Unitarian Universalists made many more contributions to the ministry of death and dying. The first minister to preach on the advocacy of cremation was Unitarian minister Octavius Frothingham in 1874. Unitarians established memorial societies meant to prevent the manipulation of distraught consumers by the funeral industry. And they were at the forefront of promoting the acceptance of hospice care and continue to lead efforts to legalize the right and dignity of making choices in our decisions about our death process. Now, at the time of the 1800s, the Unitarians were considered a modern, progressive, liberal faith, but substantially within the liberal wing of Christianity. They attempted to reconcile the Enlightenment, like Locke, imperialism, with Christianity by maintaining that the accounts in the Bible provided overwhelming evidence for the truth of religion. But enter those transcendentalists, Emerson and Thoreau, who decided that, you know what, Unitarians are good, but not correct. And they admired people like Channing's idea that human beings can become more like God, but they were persuaded more by Hume, who said that there was no empirical proof of religion that could be satisfactory. And Emerson himself wrote, "We have no experience of a creator, and therefore we know of none." The Transcendentalists moved Unitarianism completely away from the creedal belief system toward the principles which continue to guide us today. So we approach the concept of death with scientific understanding and spirituality. And spirituality is not different from science. They value the dignity of human life and support the right to make end-of-life decisions. We are guided by the belief in the inherent dignity of life. That is one of our principles. This extends to the end of life, where dignity may be compromised by prolonged suffering. Our association supports the legal protections that allow us to make the decisions about our life and our death. We emphasize the personal exploration and the spiritual growth that allow us to value the journey of meaning and purpose. It is our job to discern our meaning in life and our meaning of our death. We may reject traditional notions of heaven and hell as literal and fixed destinations in the afterlife, but we emphasize ethical living, personal growth, and creating a more just and compassionate world in the here and now. We also provide a welcoming space for individuals to explore their belief, to engage in social justice work, to build the supportive community based on our shared values of compassion and respect. This allows us to have discussions like today, where people will have differences in their opinions and thoughts, but respect that no one knows. And these are all part of our creative process. When we look at Kubler-Ross's stages of death and dying, does rational understanding help us? We know the stages: anger and bargaining and guilt. And by gosh, we're going to repeat those over and over again before we get through. because we grieve a loved one's life and their death, perhaps forever. When I do memorial services, one of the things I say is we put one of our feet in grief and the other in gratitude. And the first part of that process of the death of a loved one, we're more firmly planted in grief. We have gratitude, but we're planted emotionally in grief. And as time goes on, we still have grief, but we can move to gratitude, and that's part of our healing process. We do hold a scientific, rational, and nature-based view of death. As well as Unitarian Universalists, we hold a connection to the transcendent, however we understand that to be. So we connect with our dead not of irrationality, but out of our deep spirituality of the principle that we are all connected. And that includes connecting to the people who have died before us, because the lessons that our ancestors taught us, both in their triumphs and in their tragic mistakes, are lessons that we should learn. And we don't deny the future. We are connected to people who may never know us, just like in that photo. And what we do today in our lives will affect their lives in the future. If we fight for freedom and justice and human rights, their lives will be better. If those get lost, their lives will be worse. So we connect to our past, those who have died, and we connect to those who are yet to be born. Death is not to be feared, it is to be respected as part of life. I have reverence and acceptance in order to prepare myself to lead my best life and to prepare the world for those that come next. I conclude with a prayer from the book Death Be Not Proud, which maybe you have read. It was written by John Gunther Sr. about his son who died of cancer, brain cancer, in 1946. He was 17 years old. It's called The Unbeliever's Prayer. The Unbeliever's Prayer. Almighty God, please forgive me for my agnosticism, for I shall try to keep it gentle and not cynical, nor a bad influence. And oh, if thou art truly in the heavens, accept my gratitude for all thy gifts, and I shall try to fight the good fight. So I think about that. Just like in our sermon that we did about God, it does not matter whether you believe in a God or what kind of God or you don't. It does not matter how you view death in the afterlife. What matters is the values in the life that we live, and to be open to the adventures and understandings, whatever they may be, and they may change. So when we reflect about death as Unitarian Universalists, we will fight the good fight in life. We celebrate the Day of the Dead. We connect with our loved ones and our ancestors before us, and we connect with our responsibility for those yet to be born. Thank you.